interview, and Noelle Okwedy is with me. She's the energy analyst at Stears Business. Hello, Noelle. Are you okay? I see you're
Hi,
okay.
Nancy.
Welcome to the program. Quite a while. The last time we
How are
spoke was
you?
when? I think we spoke in December. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, we last spoke in December where I was serenading you with your name as a Christmas song. So welcome again.
Yeah.
Welcome again to the
Thank you for
program.
having me.
Noelle, can you, in your own words, really describe how you feel and also gauge how Nigerians have been feeling for over 21 days now about the absolute disaster that we've seen around fuel scarcity? And this is a bit different from what we have seen because this fuel scarcity is caused by adulterated fuel, dirty fuel, fuel that there was methanol. So just describe to me what you think.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy, for that question. So personally, and even I feel the same way the rest of Nigerians are feeling, which is mostly frustration, because it's sad actually that at this point in Nigeria's existence, we should still be dealing with fuel scarcity, especially with the reason for this stage of fuel scarcity. So it said that there was higher than normal methanol content in the fuel that was received by the NNPC this month. And what's funny is that they didn't test for methanol, so that's not a test that they usually do. And for me, the way I look at it is like an example is like a doctor has a patient, and the patient comes and says they're not feeling well. You do all the tests, but you don't test for maybe malaria. The patient dies, and you say, "Oh, we don't usually do malaria tests." Nobody's going to say the patient is at fault. So I don't think that's a credible reason that they don't usually do methanol tests. So now people's cars have been damaged, people's engines are ruined, people are owed money actually. And if it was a normal society, NNPC would be sued for damages because they've damaged equipment and vehicles for people. But yeah, I think the overall feeling is just frustration and just sadness, really.
Were you satisfied with the explanation that came out from NNPC in terms of announcing and releasing the marketers or those that imported that fuel? Because the notion we've always had, and which NNPC had always put forward, was that NNPC is in charge of this petrol because other marketers do not import. So we know NNPC as the major importer. So at that point, many Nigerians were really, I don't know if you also were a bit confused as to that kind of news, that where is it coming from? Duke Oil, okay, which is, they mentioned MRS and all others. I'm like, when did this really come from? So does that mean our subsidy too, where is it going to? You know, so those kind of questions. How comfortable were you with that announcement?
Well, I was very uncomfortable with it because it just pointed to the level of incompetence that NNPC has displayed recently. So we know for a fact that NNPC is the sole importer of fuel in Nigeria, of petrol, and this is because of the subsidy regime where they pay for the difference between the market price and the allowed pump price in Nigeria. So for other importers, it's not profitable to go to import fuel. So NNPC, through Duke Oil, which is one of their subsidiaries, has been the sole importer of petrol. So for them to come out and start pointing fingers at MRS or Wandu was quite confusing. And it just seemed like they were trying to shift the blame. But even bigger than NNPC, I think for me, I would also blame the regulators. So the midstream and downstream regulator, the regulators, because for me, I feel like they should have been the ones to come out and say NNPC did this, or actually saying who are the culprits. But instead, you're having a public, I don't even know what to call it, display where between NNPC, MRS, or Wando, everyone is releasing statements saying that they're not responsible or they are responsible, and fingers are just being pointed without any regulatory body coming out to say, okay, this is the real reason, this is the person, it's NNPC or it's Owandu, but it's NNPC clearly. So yeah, I think I'll just point the fingers at the regulators.
How do you think that the probe, which the National Assembly says it's undertaking, and the query by Mr. President, who happens to be the Minister of Petroleum, how do you see that really playing out? And what kind of punishment? Yes, because there should be reward and punishment. If you do good, you should be rewarded. If you do bad, you should be punished so that it will serve as a deterrent. We're talking about, you know, it's just this country that we don't understand the essence of data. If we take data seriously and if we also look at counting the cost on a daily basis, we will understand what exactly is happening right now, what the economy is losing, what manpower, the productivity, you know. So how do you think that should really play out? Or are you also seeing that perhaps when this furore just goes, perhaps in a few days or so, everybody will just keep quiet again and go back to the shelves and we won't hear anything about it again?
Okay, Nancy, so you basically said it, but I mean, I think maybe I'm being pessimistic, but I think that the second scenario that you've just outlined is probably what will happen, where after a few months, everyone will just forget about it and we'll move on. But that's not how it should be, just like you said. There should be damages for the people whose vehicles were damaged. There should be repercussions for NNPC for putting the country in this kind of dilemma where people's livelihoods are at stake, commercial transportation, people, transporters, commercial vehicles, businesses, because we don't have electricity or constant electricity in the country. So fuel is not just for cars, it's also for generators. You're putting people's livelihoods and businesses at stake. And there should be damages for all that, because all these are costs that are coming with this fuel scarcity that we're experiencing. But like you said, in Nigeria, due process is just something that's not followed. Even this situation that we're in is just a symptom of Nigeria, really, because I don't see this happening in any developed or organized society. So to be realistic, I'll just say that I don't think anything is going to come out from it. I wish that Nigeria was a more ideal country where we could say that there would be damages for people that have suffered loss, but just being realistic, I don't think so.
Okay, Noelle, if you take a look at it, we've pointed fingers at perhaps the authorities that should take charge of that in terms of investigating fully and also bringing out the results of their investigation and going to the latter to ensure that this doesn't happen again. The other finger we should also turn to ourselves, that are people that monitor these things. Do you think that as media people, as analysts, and as, you know, for those of us that watch the space, we shouldn't let this just go? Because this is not the first time we've also had the issue of dirty fuel. It happened some years ago. So what should we even be doing for those that are market watchers, for those that are analysts, for those that are media people, for those that are, you know, watch the space? We shouldn't allow them go, isn't it? And we should put pressure.
Yes, I agree that we should put pressure, but at the same time, I'm wondering what kind of result our pressure would even produce, just because of the way Nigeria is structured, where even when the people come out and complain and make noise, nothing really seems to change, and there's no concrete change that, like we said earlier. So I understand that there's a place for the media to make noise and to be loud and to demand change, but at the same time, just looking at past experiences and when people have even tried to make statements, just looking at the results that we've had, we haven't really seen anything. But at the same time, I think that it's also important that we keep the hope alive. And so, yeah, I agree with you that the media and analysts and even normal Nigerians who have been affected by the fuel scarcity, which is basically all of us, we shouldn't keep quiet about them. We should keep demanding for reparations and damages from the authorities. But it's difficult to still be hopeful, to be honest, with just the way Nigeria is. So I also wouldn't blame people for being tired and for just not putting in their efforts to something that they feel like will not produce any results for them.
You know, I think the bulk would also stop with Mr. President, so to speak, because he's the Minister of Petroleum. So he should, at the end of the day, make sure that this is followed through and ask for the results of the investigations and all of that, and make sure that this embarrassment doesn't happen again. But let's move over to counting the cost, really, because not just only motorists, their cars are damaged, businesses that run on generators. You can imagine, for example, like that communications now, getting that fuel and putting in the generator. We won't be here now. You know, you can imagine what it would take for a company such as this. And some may have also experienced that and licking their wounds now. So how should Nigerians seek compensation? Bearing in mind, let me put this caveat, that many of us will go to petrol stations, we just go, buy fuel, and go. Some of us, many of us don't collect receipts. Even when you use your debit card, you just squeeze the stuff and throw it. So how difficult will it be for Nigerians to seek redress over damaged properties or whatever?
Okay, so I'll agree that data, even besides the receipts and keeping of receipts, just is the filling stations or the petrol stations should know that they've sold petrol, the contaminated petrol that was sold. They know that they've sold to certain people, but even knowing those people in Nigeria is a problem because we don't even have data to even know who is who. And yeah, so that whole thing, that's just a problem that we have in Nigeria. But it's still a fact that these petrol stations sold petrol to people, and they might not know these people, but there are people. So if people come forward and say, oh, you sold petrol to me, it was contaminated, look at my car. You can check the car for, if it's still there, the petrol is still there, but you can see the damage that has been done. So there's physical evidence that petrol was sold, and this contaminated petrol did damage to people's cars, people's generators, and even the scarcity that we're experiencing. So people need petrol to run their businesses. Transporters need petrol. They can't get petrol. They're queuing for hours to get petrol, and those are hours that they're losing that they could have used to make money. So all these are losses. The opportunity cost of waiting in line is a loss, is a cost that nobody is bearing that we are bearing right now. But those costs should be attributed to the NNPC and the people that have caused this situation. So these are costs that we can see and we can trace and we can track. So I don't think that it will be difficult to ask for damages because the proof is there, really.
No, I don't know if I share in this your optimism of what you've just said, because if a motorist goes to a filling station and says, just take a look at it, you've damaged my car, I bought fuel from here. Okay, how about others? Some may not even have cars and still approach the retail outlets, the petrol station, and say, I bought fuel, you've got to pay me. How will the petrol stations, or even how will compensation be done? How will, for example, the agency in charge of consumer protection, FCCPC, it's a mouthful, so let me not just go into the full name of the acronym. How will that body, the FCCPC, track and help Nigerians follow up on compensation? Because at the end, okay, did you buy from this station? This is the receipt. You know, so I don't know, it's difficult to share your optimism.
Yeah, so that's also a point that you've just made. But I think that even though there might be people that would come up and say, oh, I bought contaminated petrol from this filling station, and maybe people that are lying, I think that there should be ways to dig down and interrogate them, get the facts, because even with like law enforcement, for example, you have suspects and people are saying, oh, they did this, they didn't do that. There are ways for law enforcement to dig deep and investigate and find out whether someone is lying or telling the truth. So it might be difficult, yes, and I'm not in law enforcement or an investigative agent, unfortunately. So I can't really say the exact ways, but I know that there are ways that these things are dealt with and investigated and the truth is brought to light.
Okay, let's take a look at the promise by NNPC to supply more billions of liters into the market. This at least was said just a few days ago. We're still not seeing any is not abating, so to speak, should we take NNPC's words for it? And NNPC has said that Nigerians should not really panic, you know, that there's enough fuel in supply for our demand.
Well, I wouldn't take NNPC's word for it in this case, because there's obviously a reason for people to panic. Like filling stations, some filling stations are closed because they don't have supply. And the NNPC should just be honest, because obviously there's a lag between when the contaminated fuel came in and then it was recalled, between then and the process of ordering or importing more petrol. It takes time for petrol to come from Belgium or wherever it's coming from to Nigeria. Then even when it gets here, transporting it to all the states in Nigeria, that is also some time that will be taken. So there's obviously a lag period between when the order is made and when it gets to the final consumer. So I think it's just for the NNPC to be honest that I don't know exactly how long it will take, obviously, but it's not going to be immediate. But I don't see it lasting for that long, because according to the NNPC, if their word is to be believed, we're going to get a shipment by the end of the month. So we'll just stay hopeful, I guess. But there's obviously going to be a lag period. It's not going to just abate immediately.
Let's take a look at the reason why we are in this predicament, which is methanol are found in the petrol that we're using. And NNPC did say that we don't do the test for methanol. I just hope that future occurrences don't happen. How do you think we should approach this in terms of finding out what our spec is and what spec is supplied to us? Because we do know, okay, crude oil, the distillation process is boiled in a distillation column. Okay, I'm speaking science now. Let me just try and bring it down a bit. You know, how crude oil broken down into other parts. You have a lot of stuff from crude oil. Even your deodorants that you use, paraffin, everything can be gotten from crude oil. So this reason of saying that methanol is not tested, is this something that in future we should test for it? The NNPC has said that in future shipments we won't have that. What does it say for the surveillance? Yes, I think that was the word I was looking for. So surveillance of these shipments and the authorities that are in charge.
Yeah, so from your question, I'm guessing you're asking what should be done in the future.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So obviously, I think that in the future we should be doing all the tests that we can do and all the tests available, especially because one of the major reasons why we're even in this situation is because the NNPC is the sole importer of petrol. And if it was a free market where there were other importers, then these other importers could meet the shortfall because of this damage that NNPC has caused. So if there was, with this methanol shipment, other importers could also import their own quantities of petrol, and NNPC could recall their petrol, and we would still have petrol available for everyone. But in a situation where there's only one person bringing in petrol or a product to a market, that means everybody has to wait for that person to get more or even fix the issue. And that's just not an efficient way to run a country, especially for petrol, which is so important for Nigeria, not just for transportation, but also for electricity and other uses even. So I think that, one, we need to fix this subsidy issue urgently, because NNPC cannot be the sole importer of petrol, a commodity that is so important in Nigeria. And then we need to make sure that we're doing all the possible tests that we need to do to make sure that petrol is safe for use, again, because of the importance of petrol to the Nigerian economy and Nigerian businesses in general.
You know, as at yesterday, I think the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria did say that some retailers in Lagos had started blending the adulterated PMS into clean fuel. Many of these retail outlets still have this adulterated fuel in their tanks. The issue now is that how do they get it out? Perhaps that's why they're also resolving to blending it into clean fuel. I don't know what that means really though. But recalling that fuel back and filling up the tanks, I guess they will have to, clean those tanks too before the new fuel comes in. How do you see this playing out, especially at a time where this is very gruesome for us at this time? Many Nigerians are tired of what's happening right now. And how many more days or weeks can we be patient to take this?
Yes, so first of all, I think that this action by retailers to by themselves makes petrol, I don't know what safety conditions they have, because we know that petrol is very flammable. So mixing adulterated and unadulterated petrol, it doesn't sound safe at all to me, and it doesn't sound like something that anyone should be doing on their own, because petrol is, at the end of the day, chemical, and you're basically mixing chemicals, flammable chemicals, in a tank. It just does not sound safe at all to me. So I don't think that anybody should even be doing that in the first place. So and second of all, so these contaminated fuels, or this contaminated petrol should really be recalled. Anyone that still has contaminated petrol in their tank and is hoping to mix it, I don't think that's safe, and I don't think that is even efficient. If it's to be mixed, if it's possible that it can be mixed or saved, then it should be done in a proper, by people that have the skills, have the knowledge to do it in a distillery or a refinery or somewhere, not just pouring uncontaminated petrol into contaminated petrol and hoping that somehow it will measure up and it will be fixed. I don't think that's proper at all.
Mm. What would you say about the regulators moving forward? Because we have a PIA now. We have a regulator that is responsible for this. The authority, I don't want to go into the acronym is also quite long. NMRD something, but the authority, the authority. So what do you expect from the regulators really moving forward? Because we do know that NNPC's team relocated to Lagos a few days ago. I don't know if they have more teams across the country monitoring the situation. NNPC on its part has said that, okay, our filling stations will be dispensing fuel 24 hours, 24/7. Some other marketers have said, okay, we can also dispense fuel to see how they can ameliorate this. But the big question mark there is really that of the regulator. And what kind of signal, what kind of signal does it send? Now that we're hoping that we are in a PIA environment.
Yeah, so first of all, your comment about the PIA environment. The last news that we heard about the PIA was that it was on hold. And this is because the PIA requires a market that is efficient, an energy, an oil and petroleum market that is efficient. And you can't have an efficient market if it's substitute, unfortunately. So that is one of the reasons why it hasn't been sold, or the major reason why. And for the regulators, so one of the reasons why DPR was removed and new regulators were brought in was so that there could be better regulatory oversight. And it was assumed that by breaking DPR's functions into upstream and downstream, we wouldn't see some of the issues that we were seeing before. But I have to say that it's quite disappointing what the midstream and downstream regulator, how they are handling this issue. So far, most of the statements that we've heard about this issue have been from NNPC. And NNPC is supposed to be a regulated entity by the PIA. It's not supposed to be the regulator or the one coming out and saying, and even giving this sort of statements, pointing fingers at people and announcing solutions. I expected that the midstream and downstream regulator would be the one giving Nigerians updates on what they're doing to handle the issue, how they are working with NNPC as the sole importer. But I guess that this is one of the inefficiencies, that not having an efficient market is just throwing up. Because when you have because as it is now, essentially NNPC has a monopoly on importing on the downstream market, really, because they are the sole importer of petrol. So I imagine that for the midstream and downstream regulator to be impossible even to regulate NNPC as they would other players in the midstream and downstream market. So to be fair to them, I don't with the PIA on hold and subsidies still in place, you can't really expect that much power from them. But I expected more still. All the same, I still expected more from them.
You know, we were talking about blending actually, and I don't really want to earlier on. I don't really want us to just gloss over it because if we're talking about blending, we're also going to be talking about the money. It's going to cost Nigerian money to blend the fuel. Earlier on, of course, we do know that some marketers now said they were going to start blending the fuel. NNPC also, and blending the fuel means that you should bring clean fuel into the dirty fuel, but more clean fuel into the dirty fuel to blend it. And if we're taking a look at the figures, in fact, what I saw was settling that for, I think about 170 billion, 201 billion naira is what it will cost NNPC. NNPC may spend over 200 billion naira to clean 170.25 million liters of dirty fuel. And for you to blend about 200 liters of dirty fuel, you would blend it with 800 liters of clean fuel. Oh God, what an embarrassment, really. I'm really ashamed even talking about these things because really, you know, it's costing time and yes, and costing money, you know. So your comments now, please.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Like, even hearing you say it is embarrassing. But one thing that comes to my mind is why, if it was a problem from the supplier, I'm wondering why NNPC is having to spend so much to blend it when they could just say that they sent them the wrong order of petrol and they could just return it and get clean petrol. NNPC has not been really clear, to be honest, about why this is going on the way it's going, why they have to blend petrol, because from the initial reports that they gave, they said that it was an issue from the supplier. So it was said that they were going to, when they had recalled the product, they were going to return it. For now, it's turning out to be another conversation about blending. And there's just a lot of confusion around what the solution should be. Because the way I think about in a rational functioning market, if I'm given the wrong specification of an order, I should be able to return it and then even sue my supplier for damages to the equipment, that the things that have gone wrong in my country. But it's not playing out like that, and it's embarrassing and confusing, actually, to be very honest.
Yes, I think there are many questions that we still need to ask, even in terms of all what has played out in the last few days for the Dpra, that's the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, saying that it needs about 800 liters of fuel to blend 200 liters of fuel, and getting out that cost of 201 billion naira. I wonder who is going to be monitoring the transparency of the process. That's also where the National Assembly needs to step in and to actually see how much is going to be needed if we are going to be blending fuel. And what's the opportunity cost, really, just like what you said? Should we go to the suppliers? Noelle, I think we should just end this show, because the more I talk about this, the more perhaps upset I get, and so that the emotions don't come out on live television, so that I don't explode. You know, but it's really not a laughing matter, because Nigerians are really, you know, in pain right now, you know. But thank you very much for coming on the show today, and let's speak sometime soon.
Thank you, Nancy. Have a good day.
You too. I've been speaking with Noelle Okwedy, who is the energy analyst at Stears Business, and that's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. I'll see you all tomorrow, God willing. Perhaps not on an upsetting note. Perhaps I'll be a bit happier tomorrow. Thank God it will be a Friday tomorrow. But just continue to be the best you can be and be that change that you want to see. And most importantly, ask questions. If you don't get answered, ask again. I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.